Hi everyone, this is Samantha from the Dancing Soap Dish. I hope you're well. July 30th is the International Day of Friendship, and Mini Scenes GB and Crafty YouTubers United have gotten together to create a special collaboration to celebrate all the wonderful friends and friendships you can make in the online crafting world. There'll be a link to the special collaboration playlist at the end of this video and also in the video description. And I really want to encourage you to go and watch all the collaborators' videos. There'll be all sorts of arts and crafts. Even if it's something that you don't usually do, you never know where you might find some inspiration. For those who don't know me, Melt and Pour soap is my favorite crafting medium, and the Melt and Pour soap has a really beautiful online community. I've made lots of amazing friends. And lately I've been really into making rainbow soaps. So I found some really cute quotes about friendship and rainbows. And today I'm going to show you how to make some rainbow soaps to celebrate the International Day of Friendship. So a little while ago I showed you that the key to making bow-shaped Melt and Pour soaps is to actually use circular cookie cutters. This time around, I'm also using this silicone mold. The cavities have a 10 centimeter diameter, so quite large cavities, but very shallow, only a centimeter deep. But I worked out that if you take your cookie cutters, I'm just going to put the largest one I have here, which is 9 centimeters, so it fits inside the 10 centimeter cavity. And then I'm going to take every third cookie cutter in this set and put them together, and then you can get rings of concentric circles that when cut in half make a rainbow. Now I have enough cookie cutters here to make a second one, so this time I'm starting with the smallest cookie cutter and again just pulling out every third cutter. So this one will be slightly smaller, but it'll still make a pretty decent sized rainbow shape. I don't have enough cookie cutters left to do a third one, so I'll just pop these away. I will be able to use those later. They will come in handy. Okay, so there we go. So the first thing to do is I'm just going to pour a very thin layer into my cavities to use to anchor my cookie cutters in place. So I've weighed out 40 grams of white Melt and Pour soap base here. I've melted it in the microwave. Just going to give it a quick stir just to check that it is fully melted and there's no lumps in it. I've got some isopropyl alcohol here, and I'm going to spray down the surface of my mold cavities and just pour in a very small amount, just dividing what I had between the two cavities. And just another spray with the isopropyl alcohol to get rid of any bubbles and help it sort of spread evenly. Okay, now while it's still wet, I'm going to add my circular cookie cutters, just the largest one and the smallest one. I'm also lining up the seams of the cookie cutters, making sure that they're both facing the same direction. I'm just sort of eyeballing, putting the smaller cookie cutter in the center of the larger cookie cutter. Now it doesn't take very long for that to set at all. And once that is set, I'm going to weigh out the rest of the soap base for this project. I am using a combination of transparent Melt and Pour soap base and white Melt and Pour soap base. At a ratio of 50-50. So this will give me an opaque soap, but it'll still allow me to have vivid colors. Now I've weighed out 310 grams, which is approximately 11 ounces. And how I came up with that number is that I want 170 grams or 6 ounces to make two 85 gram / 3 ounce bars in my large cutters, and 140 grams or about 5 ounces to make two 70 gram or 2.5 ounce bars in my smaller cookie cutters. You can see here I've just added some essential oil to scent the soap. I'm going to scent it at this stage. It'll save me time later. This is a blend of lime and frankincense essential oil, which is a very nice scent. That essential oil has turned my soap base a slightly off-white color. But that's not going to matter because I'm going to be coloring all the soap different rainbow colors anyway. Okay, so after a quick spray down, I'm going to fill up both of my molds with my melted soap base. I should have enough to fill them all right to the very brim. Then after a quick spray with isopropyl alcohol to remove those surface bubbles, I'm going to put these aside to set for a while. Okay, so it has been 2 hours later, and this soap is set to the touch, and it's cool to the touch, but it's still very, very soft. It's very deep. It's over an inch deep, these cookie cutters, so it will take a while for that to set. But that's okay. I don't want it to be fully set. I want it to be quite soft, because what I'm going to do now is I'm going to line up the remainder of my cookie cutters and push them into the soft soap all the way down to the bottom. Now, this can be difficult because, like I said, this soap is quite thick. I'm using the back of a spoon just to save my fingers and my hands there. Now, you could have done this while the soap was still liquid. And if you have poor hand strength or arthritis or anything, then that might be the route you decide to take. But I didn't want to cause the soap to overflow. I wanted to keep as much soap as possible, so I decided to do it this way. And I'm just, like I said, pushing the remainder of my cookie cutters down into my mold. Take note as well that I'm also lining up the seams of all my cookie cutters so that they're facing the same direction. Now, the reason that I'm doing this is that it's actually really hard to try and calculate how much soap base you'll need for each ring of color. So what I decided to do was just fill up the cookie cutters with the amount of soap I wanted to use, and then cut the rings afterwards, and then I'll know exactly how much I need. I'm just going to remelt down these rings, color them, and pour my rainbow. So as soon as you finish cutting your rings, remove your soap from the mold. Let's take a look. That's kind of cool. I'm just going to pull this ring of soap from around the edge. I don't need that. I could use that again later. Yep, this one's got one too. I'm going to pop out the little circles from the center. I don't need those either. And I'm just pushing out my 3 rings of soap. It is quite soft and smushy. I've smushed it up a bit, but that doesn't matter. I will give my cookie cutters just a quick rinse to make sure they're clean before the next step. Okay, so now I'm actually starting again. I've weighed out another 40 grams of soap. I reused some of the scraps from the last time. And I'm going to, again, put my cutters into the wet soap, making sure that I line up the seams. And I'm taking great care to make sure that the center cutters are smack bang in the middle. If you feel like you need to, you can actually get a ruler out and just check that there's the same distance on either side. There we go. And that'll mean that they're in the center. While that thin layer of soap is setting, I'm just going to get out some mica colors that I'm going to be using to make my rainbows. Here is a whole tray of mica colors I actually mixed myself. Check out my mica mixing video if that interests you. I'll leave a link in the video description. And I'm just going to pull out some pastel colors, pastel pink, pastel orange, and pastel purple, I think I will use for my second set of rainbows. There we go. Okay, so once this layer of soap is set, I am going to push my other cutters into the soap. So the thin layer of soap on the bottom basically just anchors the cookie cutters and seals the bottom of the cookie cutters so that soap can't spread and mix between the rings. Once those have all been pushed down to the bottom nice and firm, grab yourself a skewer. I'm just using a metal skewer here, and I'm just going to score the thin layer of soap in the bottom of the middle ring, and then use the skewer just to jimmy it up so I can pull it out. I'm going to do the same for this one here too. I don't want that thin layer of soap in there, but the thin layer of soap has sort of sealed around the edges so that this next layer that I pour won't sneak underneath. Now I've taken out my middle rings and I am just cutting them up so I can melt them back down again. At this point, get out your scales and weigh out how much soap you need for each ring and write it down, because if you want to make these soaps again, you can actually skip the first half of this process where we were working out how much soap we needed for each ring, if you write yourself down a recipe by weighing the soap out now, you can just skip straight to this part of making the coloured rings rather than having to determine at the beginning how much soap you need. So here you can see I have melted back down the center ring from my smaller rainbow, and I am in the process of tinting it this beautiful pastel orange color. I'm just going to add like half a scoop more of mica. I worked out a good rule of thumb is 1 scoop of mica for the smaller rings, 1.5 scoops of mica for the middle rings, and 2 scoops of mica for the outer rings. I have here a small 2-ounce paper cup that I've poured my soap into. I use a little paper cup like this because it allows me to get down nice and close. I'm pouring into a very narrow area, and I can pinch the edge of my cup to create a spout and then get down really close to the cookie cutters and make sure that I just get the soap just inside that ring and nowhere else. Now I have melted down all the soap from the middle ring of my larger rainbow. This ring is going to be yellow, so just a scoop there of the mica. I spray the mica down with the isopropyl alcohol so that it mixes better into the soap. Trying to mix a powder, there's another half a scoop. Trying to mix the powder without the alcohol, the powder just tends to float and it's really hard to mix in. Sometimes I mix my color in with my fragrance, but since this soap is already fragranced, I can't do that this time, so that's why I was spraying with the alcohol. It's also very important to spray down with alcohol the little section that you're going to be filling. Give it a really liberal spray with the alcohol before you start filling it to make sure that the soap flows all the way down to the bottom and you don't end up with any air pockets, just because it is, it's a narrow and small area that we're trying to fill with soap. Let that soap fully set. It doesn't take too long because it's not a huge amount of soap. And then I want to remove the outer ring. Now, this is nigh on impossible to do with just your fingers. You just don't have the proper leverage. So what you can do is get one of your other cookie cutters, put it upside down on your ring of soap, then use the lid of the cookie cutter container to protect your hand. Now I'm pressing down on the cookie cutter to keep the ring of soap pressed against the bottom of the mold, and then I'm using the edge of the handle of the spoon to jimmy up the edge of the outer cookie cutter, and then once I've done that all the way around, I can just pop that straight out. Okay, so let me show you that again. Put a cookie cutter upside down, use the lid to protect your hand because it's sharp, and then just work your way around, jimmying up the edge of the rim of the cutter that you want to remove. And there we go, that just pops straight out. So I am using my skewer again just to score the thin layer of soap on the bottom and extract it, because I don't want a layer of white soap in the middle of my rainbow. So I'm doing the same for both of my molds. I did sort of nick the orange there. I'll just sort of press that back into place. Okay, so now I'm doing the outer layers. Again, cutting it up, melting it down. Take note of how much you're using, so next time you can just weigh it straight out. Starting with my smaller one, I am going to be using this pastel pink. And it's because it's the outer layer, 2 scoops of mica is the rule of thumb. Once that's all stirred in, I'm going to transfer it to my little paper cup. I'm just tidying up this orange layer here, had a little bit of smudge on it. Spraying down the little section liberally with isopropyl alcohol that I want to fill, and I'm going to pinch the edge of my cup to create a spout and just pour that in there. I just do this in sections just because I can't fit all the soap in the paper cup at once. But there we go. Once that's filled to the brim, I will spray that with alcohol to get rid of those surface bubbles. Here is the raspberry pink that I'm doing the outside color of my larger rainbow. Again, just doing it in stages so I can use my little cup. I have spilt a little bit. I'm not really worried about that. I can clean that up later. But here we go. I'm noticing some bubbles. I'm wondering if maybe there's some leaking out the bottom. That's why I'm just pushing down the cutters. Because if bubbles are rising to the surface, it normally means that air's getting in because soap is escaping. Okay, so my outer ring of soap has only been setting for about half an hour, so it's not fully set, but it's set enough that I can try and remove this ring in the middle. Just that extra ring of soap just allows me a little bit more leverage, and so I can use, I'm just using the tip of a knife here just to jimmy up this ring here that I'm trying to get out. Just make sure you push the soap down. You don't want to pull the soap out with the ring. That's worst case scenario. That's not what we want. So you need to keep the soap down in the bottom of the mold while pulling the ring up. I'm going to do the same here, just using the edge of this knife. Thank goodness these cutters have lips, because I wouldn't be able to do it if there wasn't a lip to sort of use for leverage. There we go. And I'm taking out the little layer of white soap in the bottom of my ring. And I am pouring my third color here, which for this rainbow is the pastel purple. And I just want to show you for my final rainbow, I wanted an aqua color. So I actually used, it's about 3/4 of a scoop of the blue and about 1/4 of the scoop of the green to get this really pretty aqua color. As you can see there, I'm really happy with that. That's exactly the color I wanted. And again, I'm going to pour this in. You'll notice that the red, there's way more red than the yellow, and the red sort of poured on top of the yellow. I think I stuffed that up. I found a little sort of like scrap of soap, and I wasn't sure where it came from, and so I just chucked it in with the pink layer, but clearly it must have come from the yellow layer, because there's not supposed to be more pink than yellow soap. Okay, so this soap has been left overnight to fully harden. It needs to be really hard for this next stage. You can see the surface here, the rings sort of have a concave shape to them. That's just due to the nature of how they were poured, and it's unavoidable. But I can understand if you want to do something about it. So you could just pour, a layer of white or a layer of clear or another color, just to finish off nicely the back of your soap, or you can scrape it down and sort of buff it smooth. So here I am just removing the center cutter from each of these rainbow soaps. Here's a little circle from the center, and I'll pull this out. See, the pink was leaking. That's why I was getting those bubbles. There's a little bit of leakage there at the bottom. Okay, so I'm just pulling away the scraps around the edge. Ta-da! Take a look at that. Isn't that fantastic? So if you think of those rings cut in half, you get these really cool rainbow-shaped soap bars. So much fun. Okay, so to remove the soaps from their outer rings, I'm going to need the help of the cookie cutters again. Take the second largest cookie cutter compared to the ring and put it upside down on the surface. Then turn the soap over and just pull the ring down towards the bench. Just let gravity do its thing. It's a little bit slimy because of the soap, but it's not too hard to do. And then you can just pull the outer ring down to remove it. There we go. Okay, so this is a little while later, and as you can see, this pastel soap on the left here has been smoothed out and buffed on both sides. It's looking nice and smooth. I'll show you how you can do that in a little while. But for now, I'm going to cut these in half. So I'm going to use a ruler and a set square. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to find out where the mark from the cookie cutter seam is here on the edge. And that should line up with the inside one as well, because I lined up all my seams. So that's going to be the line on which I cut the soap in half. So that will effectively hide that cookie cutter seam, because I'll cut along that line. So I'm just measuring out here. I'm using the ruler for a straight edge, and I was measuring out with the set square just equal amounts on all sides to make sure that I cut it in half perfectly. It's pretty close. It wasn't perfect. You also got to make sure you cut like at a right angle to your surface as well, or else your rainbow might have a bit of a lean. Okay, so I'm doing the same here. If you were going to do a lot of these, I'd probably make up a template. For example, you could just trace the outline of a cookie cutter onto a piece of paper and fold it in half, and that would give you a perfect half. That's probably what I should have done. And let's just save you all this fussing about and measuring, and just use a little template to find the center so that you get perfectly even rainbows. Yeah, see, those ones aren't too bad. They look pretty good. Okay, now let me show you the scraping and the buffing that I did to finish off the back of the soap. So I have here these two scrapers here, and I've actually just stuck my soap back inside the cookie cutter just to protect the edges. And what I'm doing is I'm just using the scraper to scrape the surface of the soap, to scrape away all that pink that was sitting on top of the yellow, and also scraping down the concave surface of the soap flat. There's no difference between these two scrapers that I'm using other than their size. The larger one will scrape off a large amount of soap, and the little one's just good for getting around the edges. I'm now buffing the surface of the soap with this cellulose cloth, and I'm actually going to just pop it back out of the cookie cutter now, and just give the soap a buff. It's kind of like sandpaper, just sort of rubbing the soap against the cloth, just to smooth out the surface of the soap, buff out any scratches, buff out any grooves, and round the edges off nicely, and it just comes out really lovely. There we go, just finishing that off now. Okay, let's have a look. So you can't even really tell which is the front and which is the back now because they've been buffed to the same finish. But there they are. I have some pretty rainbows. Let me know what you think. This tutorial is actually the 4th project in my Rainbow Soap Challenge. So that's where I've challenged myself to come up with a different melt and pour soap rainbow project every month for an entire year. You can find all the rainbow soap projects in a special playlist on this channel. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's video, and please don't forget to also tune into the other videos in the special International Day of Friendship Collaboration playlist. Remember, there's a link at the end of this video. Please don't forget to like and subscribe if you love what I do here at the Dancing Soap Dish. And until next time, guys, enjoy!